Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this comprehensive course on William Shakespeare. I'm Dr. Muhammad Al-Rishi, and I'm excited to take you on a journey through the life, works, and enduring legacy of the world's greatest playwright. Over the next several sessions, we're going to explore not just Shakespeare's brilliant plays and the sonnets, but also the fascinating world he lived in. Elizabethan England, the global theater or the globe theater, and how his influence continues to shape literature, film, and popular culture even today. Whether you're encountering Shakespeare for the first time or revisiting these masterpieces, this course is designed to make this work accessible, engaging, and personally meaningful. Let's begin. Course outline learning objectives. Here is what we will be covering in this course. We have five major chapters. First, we'll dive into Shakespeare's life and historical context. Who was the man? When and where did he live? And what was happening in England during his lifetime? Second, we'll explore Shakespearean genres and themes. Shakespeare didn't just write one type of play, he mastered tragedies, comedies, histories, and romances. Each was each with distinct characteristics and themes that resonated with audiences then and still do today. Third, we'll examine language and literary techniques. How did Shakespeare use language so powerfully? We will look at his poetry, wordplay, metaphors, and the famous soliloquies that reveal characters' inner worlds. Fourth, we'll discuss Shakespeare in performance and modern adaptations. These plays weren't meant to be read silently in books. They were created for the stage. We will see how different productions interpret his work and how Shakespeare's influence appears everywhere, from Hollywood films to contemporary novels. Finally, we will talk about student engagement and assessment to understand how to actively learn from Shakespeare rather than passively memorizing facts. By the end of this course, you will be able to understand key facts about Shakespeare's life and Elizabethan era, recognize characteristics of literary techniques. Through close reading, appreciate Shakespeare as a theoretical event, not just a text. See his influence on modern culture and understand why he means relevant or why he remains relevant today. Let's get started. Shakespeare's life and historical context. Shakespeare's bibliography highlights. Let me start with the basic biographical facts about William Shakespeare. These might seem straightforward, but understanding this personal life helps us appreciate how these experiences shaped his art. Born April 23, 1564, in Stamford-upon-Avon, a market town about 100 miles northwest of London. His father was John Shakespeare, a glove maker and leather worker, not aristocracy, but a respectable tradesman. His mother was Mary Arden from a Catholic family with some land holdings. The year he was born was significant. 1564 was also the birth year of Galileo, and it was during the English Renaissance, a time of intellectual and cultural awakening. At the age of 18, in 1582, Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway, who was 8 years older than him, roughly 20 to 26 years old. This was documented in marriage records. They have three children together. First, Susanna, born in 1583, and then twins, Hamlet and Judith, born in 1585. Interestingly, we know very little about Anne Hathaway beyond these facts, which has sparked much speculation by biographers. By the early 1590s, Shakespeare had moved to London and emerged as an actor, playwright, and shareholder in the Lord Chameleon's Men, one of the England's leading companies. This was a crucial period when he began writing plays and building his reputation. In 1599, the Globe Theatre opened, the iconic venue where many of Shakespeare's most famous plays premiered. Shakespeare was actually a part owner of the Globe, which meant he wasn't just a writer, but a theoretical entrepreneur with financial stake in productions. After more than 2 decades of remarkable productivity, Shakespeare died on April 23, 1616. His 52 or his 52nd birthday. The causes of death aren't previously documented, though various theories exist. However, his legacy was secure. In 1623, 7 years after his death, two of his former colleagues published the first folio, collected edition of 36 of his plays. Without this publication, many plays would have been lost forever, performed orally but never preserved in print. The key point, we know surprisingly little about Shakespeare's personal life. We have baptism records, marriage documents, poetry deeds, and a will. The gap is our knowledge having inspired centuries of speculation and scholarship. But what we do know is that he created an extraordinary body of work that continues to captivate audiences worldwide. Little bit in historical context. To truly understand Shakespeare, you need to understand the world he lived in Elizabethan era, roughly 1558 to 1603, was one of the most dynamic periods in English poetry. The Renaissance was in full swing. Europe was experiencing a cultural and intellectual rebirth, inspired by rediscovery of classical Greek and the Roman texts. There was renewed interest in humanism, the belief that human being and human experience were worthy of artistic and philosophical attention. This influenced how playwrights like Shakespeare approached character psychology and moral questions. In 1588, when Shakespeare was 24 years old, England defeated the Spanish Armada. This wasn't just a military victory, it was psychologically transformative. For decades, England had been threatened by Catholic Spain. When English ships, aided by storms, defeated the Spanish fleets, national pride surged. Suddenly, England wasn't just a secondary power, it was a major player on the world stage. Shakespeare's history plays written around this time reflect this newfound confidence in English identity and national destiny. The Protest, the Protestant Reformation had transformed English religion. Harold the Eighth had broken from Roman decades earlier. Now, under Elizabeth the First, Protestantism was the official religion, but this created anxiety. Catholics and Protestants clashed. People worried about religious persecution. These tensions appear in Shakespeare's plays when characters question faith, loyalty, and conscience. Elizabeth, the first 45-year regime provided politically stability after decades of civil war. The Wars of the Roses, dynastic conflicts between noble families, had devastated England for 30 years. Elizabeth's father, eighth, had ended the conflict, but Roma lingered. By the time Elizabeth took the throne in 1558, England desperately wanted peace. Elizabeth delighted or delivered it, which allowed culture and commerce to flourish. Shakespeare's entire career happened during this period of relative peace and prosperity. However, life was still precarious. The plague, bubonic plague, regularly swept through London, killing thousands during plague outbreaks. Theaters were closed, forcing actors to tour the provinces. This affected Shakespeare's income and schedule. You can see references to plague and diseases and anxiety throughout his plays. There were conspiracies and theaters and threats. Assassination plots against Elizabeth were discovered regularly. Catholics wanted to remove the Protestant queen. Foreign powers plotted invasion. This created an atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia, themes you'll notice running through his tragedies like Hamlet and Macbeth. Socially, this was as a hierarchical world, the great chain of being the idea that society had um, divinely ordained order from king at the top down through nobles, merchants, servants, artisans, and peasants was almost universally accepted. Disrupting that hierarchy was considered not just illegal, but cosmically wrong. Yet Shakespeare frequently questions this hierarchy, imagining what happens when it breaks down. What does all this matter? Shakespeare wasn't writing in a vacuum. His plays actually address the concerns of his audience. What makes authority legitimate? How should a monarch rule? What happens when social order breaks down? Can individuals resist fate? What makes us human? These questions made sense in Elizabethan England, but they remain relevant today because they're fundamentally human questions. Now let's go to Elizabethan theater and the globe. Now let's talk about the physical space where Shakespeare's plays were performed. The theater itself. Understanding the globe theater helps us understand how Shakespeare wrote his plays. The Elizabethan theater was radically different from modern theater. First, it was open air. Performances happened in daylight, typically in the afternoon. There was no artificial lighting. This affected everything. You couldn't create mystery through darkness. Instead, Shakespeare created atmosphere through language. When a character says, "Look how the stars do lich," the audiences had the aim to imagine stars even in bright daylight. The stage was a thrust stage. It extended into the audience on three sides. Picture it, the audience surrounded the stage, not just facing it, from the front, like in a modern Buscanism theater. This meant actors were intimate with the audience. Soliloquies, those moments when a character speaks directly to the audience, revealing inner thoughts. It's seen in this configuration. The actor could lock eyes with audience members just feet away. The audience was diverse. The most experienced tickets cost shillings, roughly a day's wages for a laborer. So wealthy merchants and even nobles couldn't afford the front row seats in the galleries, but the cheapest option was one open to stand in the pit right around the stage. This was called being a groundling. So you had aristocrats mingling with Shakespeare's and servants, all watching the same play. Shakespeare had to write for this diverse audience, sophisticated role play for the educated physical comedy for everyone, and the emotional depth that transcends social class. Scenery was minimal. There was no painted drops, creating realistic environments. No curtain closed and opened between scenes. And instead, scenes flowed um, continuously. A character might say, "We are now in the forest of Arden," and the audience accepted it. This meant Shakespeare could move rapidly between locations, compressing time and space in ways that allowed for complex, fast-paced storytelling. The all-male cast is crucial to understanding Shakespeare's plays. Women weren't allowed to perform on stage. This was stand practice. Young men, typically girls our ages, 10 to 20, played female roles. This seems strange to us, but it created interesting possibilities. Many of Shakespeare's comic heroines, Rosalind and As You Like It, Viola in Twelfth Night, actually disguise themselves as boys in the play. So the audience saw a boy playing a girl pretending to be a boy. There is a playful gender fluidity there that appealed to Elizabethan sensibilities and still resonates today. Now let's go to the audience was active and vocal. Unlike modern theater where were expected to sit quickly, Elizabethan audiences cheered heroes, hissed villains, sometimes even interrupted. They responded emotionally and vocally. This shaped how Shakespeare wrote prologues and uh, epilogues directly address the audience, asking for their engagement. The famous epilogue to As You Like It ends with, "If I were a woman, I would kiss as many of you as had birds that pleased me." The staging was creative but practical. There was a stage door, the tiring house, where actors could enter and exit. There might be a balcony above four scenes requiring height. There was a trapdoor in the stage floor for ghosts and supernatural elements, but there weren't elaborate special effects. When Hamlet's father ghost appears, it was probably an actor in a white sheet, not an elaborate illusion. The powers came from the language and the audience's imagination. The global theater itself burned down in 1613 during a performance of Henry VIII, when a theatrical effect misfired. It was rebuilt the next year and continued operating until the English Civil War in the 1640s. Understanding this theoretical context helps explain why Shakespeare's plays work so well. They were designed for live performance With all these constraints and possibilities in mind. Now let's move to chapter 2, Shakespeare's dramatic genres and themes. Overview of Shakespeare's genre tragedy. Shakespeare mastered different theatrical genres, each with distinct purpose and effect. Let's start with tragedy because it's often what people think of first when they think of Shakespeare. What defines a tragedy? A tragedy explores the downfall of a noble protagonist, usually a person of high social status, through a combination of personal flaws, external circumstances, and sometimes fate itself. The tragic hero makes choices, and those choices have catastrophic consequences, typically resulting in death. The tragic um, protagonist usually has a fatal flaw, what we call hamartia or hamartia in Greek. Macbeth's flaw is ambition. His hunger for power leads him to murder the king and destroy himself. Philip's flaw is jealousy. He is so susceptible to manipulation that he kills his innocent wife. Hamlet's flaw might be indecision. His inability to act decisively prevents him from stopping his uncle's evil. King Lear's flaw is pride and poor judgment. His inability to see through flattery leads to family destruction. Major Shakespeare tragedies include Hamlet about a prince who must avenge his father's murder but is paralyzed by doubt of fellow, about a noble general destroyed by jealousy and racism. Macbeth about ambitious general who murders his way to the throne and descends into tyranny and madness. King Lear about an ongoing king who divides his kingdom based on flattery and descends into madness and despair. Romeo and Juliet about young lovers destroyed by family hatred. What are these tragedies powerful? They explore profound moral and psychological questions. What happens? What happens when good people make wrong choices? Is human suffering inevitable? Do our flaws determine our fates? These questions matter because we recognize ourselves in the tragic heroes. We see how ambition, jealousy, pride, or poor judgment could destroy anyone. A key element, the tragic recognition. Near the end, the protagonist usually realizes what they've done wrong, but it's too late. Macbeth recognizes he's been deceived and that his actions have been meaningless. Lear recognizes his injustice toward Cordelia after driving her away. This moment of clarity coming too late to prevent catastrophe in deeply moving. Tragedies end with death and loss, but they also offer moral clarity. We understand why the tragedy occurred, what mistakes were made, what virtues were violated. There is a scene that the moral order of the universe has been restored through the protagonist's fall. That's why tragedy, despite being depressing, leaves audiences feeling they witness something profound and necessary. Comedy. Now let's contrast tragedy with comedy. In Shakespeare's time, comedy didn't necessarily mean a funny. It meant a play that ended in happiness and renewal, often involving marriage and social restoration. Shakespeare's comedy celebrates community and life's renewal, where tragedy shows individuals destroyed. Comedy shows individuals integrated into a society. The typical pattern conflicts exist. Confusion ensues, but by the end, things are solved and the community is stronger for it. Common features of Shakespeare's comedy: mistaken identities. Characters are confused for each other, creating hilarious misunderstanding. And the comedy of errors. There are two sets of twins, and the resulting confusion drives the entire plot. Disguised characters disguise themselves, usually women disguising as men, leading to complex situations. Rosalind in As You Like It distinguishes herself as a boy and helps her lover, while this guised this creates sexual and gender role complications that are both funny and philosophically interesting. Witty role-play. Shakespeare's comedies are filled with clever dialogue, puns, and rapid-fire wit. Characters engage in verbal sparring that's entertaining and reveals character. Multiple plots. Comedies often have several storylines running parallel. I mean, romantic plot and secondary plot that mirror or complicated resolution through marriage. Comedies typically end with weddings, symbols of social renewal and harmony restored. Major Shakespearean comedy, A Midsummer's Night Dream. Young lovers flee to an enchanted forest where magic and mischief lead to correct pairings. Twelfth Night, a shipwrecked woman disguises as a boy, creating romantic complications, much ado about nothing. Witty lovers resist romance until they're tricked into admitting their love. As You Like It, exiled lovers find refugees in the forest of Arden where love flourishes. The Tame of the Shrew, a strong-willed woman is tamed by an eccentric man. Through interpretations vary on whether this is really what happens. What are comedies valuable, or why are comedies valuable? They explore the social benefits of community, love, and acceptance. They show how confusion and conflict can be resolved through dialogue and understanding. They're often more optimistic about human nature than tragedies. People aren't destroyed by their flaws. Instead, they're educated, transformed, and integrated into society. Important to note, some of Shakespeare's comedies contain elements we had now recognized as problematic criticism, misogyny, co coercive elements in romantic relationships, but understanding these works in their historical context while also critical examining them helps us appreciate both their artistry and think carefully about the values embedded in art. Comedies end with illusion and renewal, the opposite of tragedies, exclusion, and depth. And now let's go to history. Shakespeare also wrote history plays, the dramatizations of English monarchies' reigns, particularly the period known as the War of the Roses, when noble families fought for control of the throne. What makes a history play different from tragedy or comedy? History plays focus on political power, legitimate authority, and national identity. They're based on actual historical events through Shakespeare told great libraries with facts. They typically do not end with a single character's death, but with the establishment of a new political order. Major history plays. Richard III, a deformed, ambitious prince, manipulates his way to the throne through murder and betrayal. Henry the Fourth, parts one and two, An aging king deals with rebellion while his son learns about leadership. Henry V, a young man, leads England to military victory against France and becomes a national hero. Julius Caesar depicts the assassination of the Roman genre and its aftermath. Technically Roman history, but Shakespeare treats it like an English history play. Key themes in history plays: a legitimate authority who has the right to rule, a king by divine right, a military victory. The most capable person, Shakespeare, explored these questions without giving easy answers. Effective leadership, what qualities does a good ruler need? Henry Porth, for example, shows a king who understands both the common soldiers and military strategies, who can inspire loyalty through personal charisma, national identity, and patriotism. These plays often appeal to English pride. Henry Fifth victory at Agincourt stirred nationalist sentiment. Consequences of popular struggles. The wars of the Roses were devastating. People died, family were destroyed, the nation was torn apart. Shakespeare shows the human cost of fighting for the crown. The structure of history plays, unlike tragedies with a single protagonist or comedy with a romantic couple, history plays often has multiple important characters and storylines. They show how individual actions have national consequences. Why study history plays? They teach us that politics is fundamentally about human choices and the character. Good ruler can inspire a nation. A bad one can destroy it. They show that history is messy, ambiguous, and driven by real people making real decisions, not by abstract forces. They particularly relevant when we think about leadership and governance today. Now let's go to romance. Finally, Shakespeare's romances, also called late plays, because he wrote them near the end of his career, combine elements of tragedy, comedy, and the supernatural into something unique. What characterized romance? Romances feature characters who suffer greatly but ultimately experience miraculous recovery, redemption, and renewal. There often a time gap. Years pass between acts. There are shipwrecks, storms, separated families, supernatural or magical elements, and improbable but emotionally satisfying resolution. Major romances, the Tempest, a sorcerer uses magic to shipwreck his brother and restore his daughter to rightful power. The Winter's Tale, a jealous king. Paranoia destroys his family, but after many years, the magical intervention restores them. Uh, Cymbeline, a princess, is separated from her true husband through uh, machinations, exiled to the woods, survives the poison, and is ultimately reunited with her family. Restless, a prince loses his wife and daughter to apparent death, but is miraculously reunited with both. Themes in romance, suffering is inevitable, but recovery is possible. These plays suggest that life involves loss, hardship, and separation, but grace, whether magical, divine, or human, can restore what was lost. Time's redemption, power, wrongs committed years ago can be forgiven. Separate families can be reunited. Lost love can be recovered, forgiveness, and mercy. Unlike tragedies where characters die for their crimes, romances often show villains forgiven and redeemed. Supernatural and magical elements, gods, astaghfirullah, magic, miraculous coincidences. These aren't realistic, but there's emotionally true, suggesting that sometimes life contains a mysterious beyond a rational explanation. While it romances late in life, some scholars suggest Shakespeare's romances reflect an older person's perspective, uh, someone who has experienced loss and years for restoration. They are more forgiving of human weakness than the tragedies, more accepting of misery and the chance than the comedies. Important structural note: romances often have a time gap. We see characters separated, then years pass, then they're reunited. This allows for aging to happen naturally. In The Winter's Tale, a baby is born in Act 2 and Act 4. She's a young woman. This unusual structure mirrors how life actually works. We do not experience continuous time the way traditional plays present it. So, to summarize, tragedies shows individual destruction, comedies show social renewal, through marriage histories show political power, struggles, and national consequences, and romances show miraculous recovery and redemption after suffering. Now let's move to the major themes in Shakespeare's plays. Across all these different genres, Shakespeare explore recurring themes, fundamental human questions that appear in play after play because they matter deeply. Now let's go to theme one, power and ambition. This appears most prominently in tragedies like Macbeth, Julius Caesar, and King Lear. The question is, what makes authority legitimate? How does power corrupt? Macbeth wants power so desperately that he murdered the king, but his guilt consumes him and ultimately destroys him. Julius Caesar shows conspirators who believes assassinating Caesar is necessary for the Republic, but their act backfires. King Lear shows a ruler who makes terrible decisions about power, dividing his kingdom based on flattery rather than wisdom. What Shakespeare shows us is that ambition itself isn't evil. It's a human, but unchecked ambition combined with a willingness to do wrong leads to catastrophe. The powerful people in these plays aren't cartoonish villains. They're complex humans whose desires lead them astray. Now let's go to theme two, human nature and morality. What makes us human? How should we treat others? These questions appear everywhere. In King Lear, a father treats his daughter cruelly and must learn the hard way what justice and compassion mean. In The Merchant of Venice, Shylock demands his legal right to a pound of uh, flesh, but the play questions whether legal rights and human mercy are compatible. A measure for measure. A ruler must decide whether to execute a young man or compromise justice. The play explores whether there is a right answer. Shakespeare seems genuinely interested in moral complexity. His characters rarely face simple choices between good and evil, and instead they face situations where reasonable people might disagree or where doing the right thing requires sacrifice. Now let's go to theme three, love and identity. Love appears everywhere as redemptive, transformative, dangerous. obsessive Romeo and Juliet love each other so intensely that they will die for that love. But their passion is partly infatuation based on the first sight. In Othello, love becomes jealous possession. Othello loves Desdemona, but treats her as property. Related to love is destiny in 12th Night, and as you like it, characters disguise themselves and discover who they really are. Through disguise, Rosalind, disguised as a boy, learns what she truly wants to love. There is a paradox. By pretending to be someone else, they discover themselves. Now let's go for theme four, appearance versus reality. This runs through almost all Shakespeare's plays in Hamlet's. Things aren't what they seem. The queen may have been complicit in murder. Claudius seems like a competent king, but is a murderer. Even Hamlet's madness may or may not be genuine, and much ado about nothing. Characters believe rumors that contradict what they observe, leading to false acquisitions. The theme suggested that perception is unreliable, that we deceive ourselves and others, and that truth requires careful investigation. It's philosophically profound. What can we trust? How do we know what's real? Now let's go to theme number five, fate versus free will. Do we control our destinies or fulfill predetermined fates? Romeo and Juliet begins with the famous line that they are star-crossed lovers doomed by fate, yet they make choices that lead to their doom. Did fate cause their death, or did their choices? Macbeth encounters witches who predicts he'll be king. Does he fulfill their prediction or create it through his actions? Shakespeare seems to suggest that this is an unresolvable paradox. We experience ourselves as having free will. We make choices, but we also see patterns and consequences that seem inevitable. Maybe both are true somewhere. These themes interweave throughout Shakespeare's works. Understanding them helps you recognize patterns and ask deeper questions as you read or watch his plays. So we will stop here and we'll continue inshallah next session. So until next time, ta for now.